Now, it's just over a week since Westminster's toughest-talking MP, Lee Anderson, was catapulted from the backbenches to the upper echelons of the party as Rishi Sunak unveiled him as the new Conservative Party Deputy Chair. And while we were all delighted for Lee here, not everyone shared our view, as the mainstream media, the left-wing loons and even the wet MPs from within his own party went on the attack. Now, I believe the nasty, snaring and largely unfounded vitriol that Lee Anderson has faced highlights the hatred Britain's media and political class have for the working class. But Lee is vowing to stand strong and fight back against the spears, and he joins me now live in the studio. So, Lee, you have dealt with a hell of a lot since you got this job.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, obviously, I was shocked last week when I got the call from the chief whip of the Conservative Party. Totally shocked. But after that, after it was announced I think it was on Twitter, my phone went into meltdown. The hatred coming from the left-wing mainstream media. They were Guardian, Daily Mirror, whoever camped in my villages and towns in Ashfield, poking around, asking people stuff about me, messaging LBC, messaging my ex-mining mates. It just went absolutely ridiculous, and they were digging stuff up from years and years ago. There were accusations of me being linked to far-right white supremacy.
So let's deal with
rubbish.
So let's deal with a couple of these specifically. So the first thing is they're trying to say, because you were pictured with someone, that you have some sort of neo-Nazi.
I was at a charity event where there's about 200 people there. A chap had his photo took with me. It turns out this chap, he supported a punk band from the 90s that sang a song with a Hitler lyric in. So that was my link to being a far-right supremacist. It's absolutely pathetic. And it's not me it bothers, and it bothers my mum and my dad and my family and my friends. It doesn't bother me. I'm an ex-miner. It's water off a duck's back to me. But they really should hang their heads in shame, you know, people like the Daily Mirror. Absolute gutter press.
Well, I think the worst thing they've done, actually, is try and piss all over your backstory, for want of a better phrase. And the thing is, we've spoken about it a lot here. And the reason your backstory is actually so powerful is because you're not the typical Tory. You're not the old Etonian Tory. You were a working-class miner who, at some points, was struggling so much to fund your family that you had to work 7 days a week and sell your car. But they are desperate, aren't they, to somehow find a way to undermine that?
I think, personally, Dan, I'm the Labour Party's worst nightmare because they can't pull me up on anything. I've been that working-class person. You know, I've had a proper working-class job. You know, I've come from an area which was really deprived. The street I was brought up on was piss poor, if I'm honest. So I've been there, I've got the T-shirt. So when I look at them, some of them publicly school-educated socialists on the opposite benches, they look at me and they think, you know what, I can't cope with them. And they can't cope with me. I ain't going to back down. I've got broad shoulders, and whatever I've got a breath in my body, I'm going to go for them.
Of course, the other reason there's so much vitriol is because they thought you were one of them, Lee. I mean, maybe some people don't know. You were a member of the Labour Party. You actually worked for our colleague here on GB News, Gloria Di Piero, who was a Labour MP for the constituency that you went on to represent, Ashfield.
I wanted to be in a political party that spoke to working-class people. They stopped doing that 20, 30 years ago, the Labour Party. They sneer at the working man, the working woman now. I don't want to be part of that. You know, I've been made to feel incredibly welcome in the Conservative Party. And how is it that a man that comes from a deprived area, on probably one of the most deprived streets in Ashfield, can work down the pit, work in a factory, be a labourer, and all of a sudden be a Conservative MP? The Labour Party wouldn't entertain that, and that's why I'm so happy doing the job I'm doing.
No, and you should be. You should be. What about support, though, Lee? Because, look, the whole death penalty thing, right? I mean, you've spoken about it on the show.
Yeah.
You believe in the death penalty. So, by the way, do the majority of the British people. However, this revelation was viewed as pretty controversial. The Prime Minister was asked about it, and he made the point that the party doesn't support that position officially. Do you feel like they've got your back, Lee?
Yes, I do, because the great thing about the party I'm in is that you can have different opinions. And Rishi said that. He's got a different opinion to me. The government stance is totally different. What is wrong with me having a different opinion to not the vast majority of colleagues, but the majority of colleagues? But look, nothing I said was revolutionary. It's not outrageous. I mean, 52% of the British public agree with what I'm saying, so it's not like a fringe lunatic idea. It's just how I feel.
But some of this, Lee, you've got to admit, is friendly fire. I mean, we played the clip earlier in the show. Tobias Elwood, one of the Tory wets, interviewed by our own Camilla Tomei on Sunday morning. She asks a question about you, and he says, are you serious? I mean, he scoffed at the idea that you were the saviour.
Well, that's up to Tobias. I mean, I wouldn't go on TV or any sort of media and have a go at my colleagues. That's just not me. You should pull together. Bit surprised with Tobias. He's ex-army man. I thought, pull together. If you're going to criticise each other, do it behind closed doors.
Now, look, Labour loudmouth Lisa Nandy has also found herself in hot water after making this claim. Lee, let's take a look at it. This was on last week's Question Time.
Though I don't hold the same views as this guy, respectfully, Lisa, we pay you to have debates, and we don't pay you to be offended. Yep. So I think
I'm not offended. I just don't.
You said you were offended. You said it. You turned around and you said, "I'm offended by what he said." We don't pay you to be offended. We pay you to have arguments. Like, we pay you to have arguments with other politicians.
He's perfectly entitled to come to Parliament to express those views, and I have had many a robust debate with Lee Anderson in Parliament, in public and in private, about those issues.
Now, Lee, that's a total fabrication from Nandy, is it not?
I have never spoken to Lisa in my entire life, whether that be in private, in public or in the chamber. It's just a total lie. I've actually written to Lisa to ask her to provide proof, because my memory's a little bit hazy, Dan. So far, she's not got back to me, and the reason she's not got back to me is because it's a total fabrication, as you say. I don't know why she did it.
Well, we checked back, and the closest that anything seems to have come in Parliament is she was asking a question and you spoke later in that debate, but it wasn't any direct exchange.
It wasn't a two-way thing, no. I think it was to Gove. I think she asked a question to Gove, and then later on in the debate, I asked a question to Gove. That's as close as it's come. Like I say, why she's done that on Question Time in front of the whole British public, and she's got some. She needs to answer my email immediately, because she needs to apologise.
Well, the problem is, this shows how much the Labour Party are prepared to lie. Because if you're prepared to lie about a relatively small issue like that, but we know that, don't we? I know, look, and obviously in our endless quest for balance, Lee, you've even faced criticism on this very show, believe it or not. Look at this.
This guy has more to say to working class people than anyone I know.
Answers, tell me, what has he done for the people of Ashfield?
Do you want to answer that, Lee?
Well, I mean, the British public down a stick to death of this namby-pamby, hand-rigging sort of socialism. Guardian reader, probably. Never heard this bloke. He's probably, is it Ben Butthead or something, his name?
Benjamin Butterworth. He's a senior reporter for the newspaper, one of our superstar panellists on Monday
think he's the sort of person that has to Google himself every morning to see what he thought last week. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. He asked what I did for Ashfield. Let's talk about Ashfield. £62 million Towns Fund, £6.7 million Future High Street Fund, 2 new schools, £2 million for my hospital, £750,000 for Safer Streets Fund. I've got a good idea for these characters, these Benjamin Butterheads or whatever he's called. Let's have him, Gary Neville, Gary Lineker, James O'Brien, Bob Geldof, if you can find him. Stick him on an island. Call it Woke Island. Call it Woke Island. Let's have a reality TV show. They can all sit there reading The Guardian. They can bore each other to death over about 6 months, and the winner could spend a weekend with me.
And Lee, they're not in the real world, are they?
How's that for a finale?
That's the point. I like it, though. Maybe we should commission it on GB News. We'd hate watch it, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Lee, obviously, in your role as Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, very important that we ask you about the seismic political development of the day, scheming Sturgeon out in Scotland. This is good news for the Union. But some folk, Lee, are saying, actually, analytically, possibly bad for the Tories in Scotland because it allows Labour to have a resurgence there.
Yes. I mean, it could be. We've had that conversation earlier today, Dan. Look, I mean, I've been scratching my head thinking what Nicola Sturgeon's legacy is. I mean, the legacy that I see is a failing health system, it's a failing education system. I think independence now is out the window. And I just, seriously, I can't think what she's actually achieved. She's been obviously a superb politician to keep getting elected so many times, but her actual legacy, it's non-existent. It's pretty poor.
No successes. I mean, it was fascinating watching the press conference today. She didn't actually list any successes.
Well, she's got none. Absolutely none. I mean, she's going to go to bed tonight thinking what I've actually achieved for Scotland over the past 13 or 14 years, and I can't think of one single thing apart from spout on about independence. That's it.
It's true. It's true. Separatism, I call it, Lee. It's not independence, is it? She wants to take them straight back into the European Union.
Well, that ship sailed down.
It has. It has well and truly sailed. Well, look, Lee, I know you've got a busy few weeks, but you'll still be popping back here when you can.
Definitely.
So congratulations.
Cheers,
Very good news for the Conservative Party. Now